Good evening, and welcome to our program this evening with our guest, Sami Awad. My name is Kathleen Eschenpipes. I'm with the Palestine Justice Coalition. We are one of the co-sponsors for this evening's event. First order of business is about taking care of your business, and so the women's restroom is down the hall. On the side hall here is the men's restroom and the all genders restroom. So down that way for women and this way for men and all gender. Okay, I'd like to also introduce some of the representatives of our other co-sponsors. Sheila is with the Jews for Free Palestine. Sheila, could you stand? And if you have any questions about Santa Cruz Jews for Free Palestine, you can find Sheila in the lobby afterwards. And also, we are being welcomed here this evening by the RCNV. Sylvia from the RCNV is back in the booth. If you have any questions about RCNV, she'll be a wealth of knowledge on that subject. And Kalia of the Tzimtzum community. Do you want to say something,
I'm Kalia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with Tzimtzum, which is a Jewish community here in Santa Cruz for non-Zionist and anti-Zionist Jews, queer Jews, Jews on the margin. So if you're interested in learning more about Tzimtzum, come find me after, and I can get you added to our email list. Thank you.
And last of all, I'm going to invite Dora Rosen and Laughing Coyote to come up. We're going to have a land acknowledgement, and I would like to ask that you do not record this. It's a sacred and communal part of the experience here, so stop your recording for now. And
Laughing Coyote, Greg Sea Lion, Dora, for helping welcome us to this land. It's my joy and honor to welcome us into our bodies, into this community, and then to welcome our guest of honor for the evening. So just to arrive into our bodies, I'll invite you to take a breath in, maybe breathing in and just honoring yourself for getting here, and breathing out, honoring those who came to be witness with you. And breathing in, sending some love to yourself, to any of the parts of yourself that are ailing. Need some love. And breathing out, sending care to those who are living in violence and fear, who are experiencing bombing, and to our neighbors here at home who are worrying about raids, displacement, and survival. I have the opportunity to be up here and see you all, so if you want to go, if your eyes are closed, go ahead and open your eyes and just look around and see the community. This is a phenomenal turnout. We learned that just about a week ago, maybe, this event came together by the hands of some amazing organizers who are in the house tonight. And this is a tremendous turnout over such a short time. Thank you for coming and being here. I'm fresh. My name is Rhea Balea, she, her. I live here in Santa Cruz for the last year now. I'm grateful to become part of this organizing community, and I just got back from Minneapolis a short while ago. And I'll just say that it's nights like this when we can come together across our issues, across our similarities and differences, and look around. And my challenge and invitation to all of you is to not leave home tonight before you've met someone you didn't know before you came here. Because that's the work right now, is to become neighbors and to become beloved community. And to extend our definition of neighbors beyond whatever neighborhood we live in here in the Santa Cruz, Watsonville area, to feel our neighborliness with our neighbors overseas. Tonight it's my pleasure to welcome a dear friend, teacher, and a companion along the long road toward liberation, Sami Awad, who's joining us from Bethlehem, Palestine. He's starting off a national tour and starting it here in Santa Cruz with us. So we're Sami and I met something like 15 years ago when I was co-leading an interfaith delegation to the West Bank and was immediately moved by Sami's conviction to see the humanity, the empathy in every human, and to be in the work of doing justice in the West Bank. And so it's a pleasure to welcome him here from the land of olive trees to our land here on the coast. And for those in the room who may be newer to Sami's work, Sami's a Palestinian activist and author who grew up in the traditions of Palestinian nonviolence. He serves currently as the Co-Director of Nonviolence International, and has spent decades working at the intersectionality of spirituality, justice, and social transformation. He's also the founder of the Holy Land Trust, a Bethlehem-based organization that supports Palestinians in transforming trauma into resilience through nonviolent action, spiritual grounding, and community empowerment. You may also recognize him from the popular documentary Israelism. Anyone has seen it? Some folks? And in his new book, The Sacred Awakening, which we have copies of tonight for purchase over by Peter there, Sami is inviting us to look again at the heart of Jesus' message, not as a religion, a doctrine, or comfort, but as a radical call to transformation, action, and loving solidarity. Some of you may have been around here in this town to remember Sami's prior visit to Santa Cruz at the Resource Center for Nonviolence in its former home, I think in 2007. Anyone was here back then? Some of us, okay. And the hall we gather in tonight, the Scott Kennedy Hall, bears the name of a beloved local organizer who has shaped this center's heart and mission. And Scott knew Sami personally. So just calling his name into this room as a beloved ancestor in this work. And tonight our invitation is to sit in the company of Sami and explore what it means to walk a sacred path of liberation from Bethlehem to Santa Cruz, and from the visible struggles to the invisible work of healing and transformation, and to ask ourselves what lies on the far horizon of our dreams for justice. What might we dream into that we think is impossible in this moment? It would be remiss of me not to mention that we are gathering at a time of immense impossibility when the West Bank continues to face escalating settler violence, displacement, and deep instability, and there continues to be a lack of a ceasefire, and at this time of heightened escalation and bombardment of Iran, we're hearing now bombardment of Beirut and many other places as well. May our conversation, our open-hearted listening tonight, the questions that will arise in the Q&A after Sami shares with us, may it all be for healing, for justice, and be the seeds planted for the beloved community that we are living into. So welcome, Sami. We're so grateful that
you're here. Good evening. I stand speechless in what has been said so far. Thank you for your prayer. And thank you all for coming here tonight. Thank you for those who organized. Thank you, Ray, with everything you're going through, that you made this happen as well. So appreciate you. Yeah, and I want to start by honoring Scott Kennedy, the person whose name this all lies into, because he wasn't just a friend, he was a mentor and a teacher to me as well. And I remember coming here at a young age at the center with my uncle Mubarak Awad, who was very, very close to Scott. And they would go into the office and have their meetings, and I would be sitting in where the books were, and especially the comic books of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and I would flip through them as a child. And Scott came many, many times to Bethlehem, and he was such a dear friend. It was such painful news when we heard of his passing. And in that, honoring many, many elders who have taught all of us the way of nonviolence, the way of resilience, the way of justice, and have given us the mantle to continue that message. as well. I feel I want to start where the prayer, and for us to really, really understand that we are living in dark times, but to understand that these dark times are not unique to our time and our place. That this has been part of human story, part of human history. War, conflict, division, fear have been embedded in our consciousness for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And we are just inheriting that consciousness generation after generation after generation. And it's getting darker and darker and darker as we see it happening in the world. Even countries like here, where many people thought the land of the free, look what you're facing and what you're beginning to experience. And it will only get darker and darker. And that has been part of my journey to understand, where is this coming from? Why can't we get out of this? There's been so many peace treaties, so many peace agreements that have been signed, so many UN resolutions, so many conventions talking about human rights and civil rights and equal rights. Why do we keep failing? Why do we keep failing? So many movements that begin with great aspirations and great visions, and very quickly they fall, and we go back into our patterns. Why is that happening? Why does this continue to happen? And in that is what took me to begin to study Jesus and his teachings differently than what I grew up learning, maybe what many of you grew up learning in the institution of Christianity and religion. And from a rabbi who walked my land 2,000 years ago, he understood. He understood then what was happening when he lived under Roman occupation, when he lived under Jewish leaders who gave allegiance to the Romans and neglected their own people, who were only about power and wealth. The same things we are experiencing today were experienced by him and the Jewish community living under occupation 2,000 years ago. And in many, many communities around the world, this is what they were experiencing and continue to experience. And what he understood is that there is evil in this world. And I actually say this word not lightly, because growing up as a Christian, it's easy to say evil and blame the devil for it. But when I stepped out of Christianity, I can say it much more, and it's not about an entity called the devil. This is within us. It is a consciousness that we have inherited, generation after generation, which I call the prevailing consciousness. And that consciousness that is so deep in us that we don't even recognize it, is all about division and separation and patriarchy and hierarchy and fear and competition and comparing. Things we actually do in our lives as peace activists every day. The internal fighting between peace groups. Which is the better peace group than this one? Which stands with this group more than this one? It's all part of the consciousness that we have inherited. And until we begin to recognize it, acknowledge it, we won't be able to step out of it. And this is exactly what this rabbi was inviting his people, his followers, that we need to step out of the consciousness of fear and separation and division and top down into something new, the beloved community. Love, compassion, care, justice, equality. This is what he was preaching. He wasn't talking about what happens to you after you die. He wasn't talking about, if you believe in me, you're going to go to heaven. If you don't, you're going to go to hell. He never mentioned any of these things. He was talking about our shift in consciousness. This is the sacred awakening that I write in this book. And what was very powerful about his teachings, because as you know very, very well, it's kind of big in California here, a lot of like this sort of new age peace movement that bypasses, ignores is very threatened, is very sensitive to war and conflict and violence. Don't bring this into, like, what is it? This imbalances my chakras when you talk about occupation, whatever chakras are. And that so many people are just interested in spirituality and inner peace work and ignoring the reality of the world. You probably know many people that just, put me in the redwoods and let me hug a tree, and that's all I need to do to do my inner peace work. I'm fine, I love hugging trees as well. But what Jesus was teaching, and this is what indigenous communities teach, this is what real spiritual activists teach, is there is no bypassing. For us to manifest a different consciousness in this world, we have to resist and stand strong in facing the institutions of injustice that build on and manifest the prevailing consciousness of evil. We cannot ignore occupation. We cannot ignore injustice. We cannot ignore racism. And that's why Jesus wasn't just preaching kingdom or preaching new consciousness. He met with the most marginalized. He went to them. He sat with them. He closed the distance of separation between us and them. He stood in that line where the excuse of marginalization could not happen anymore. And he turned the tables in the temple. He went to where the power was and turned the tables over in the temple, where they were, where the powerful were. And so we are called into that space of what many of us define this term as sacred activism. That we're not just activists coming out of a place of hatred and resentment. We are activists that believe in a bigger vision. We believe in community. We believe in love. We believe in compassion. And we will not fall into the traps of separation and division. And this is why our unity is very, very important at this time. The force that we are facing is very, very strong. We are experiencing it in Palestine. But as you know very well, it will come here. Thank you for bringing that sign in. First they come for the other, but soon enough they will come for you. And in division and in separation, we will lose. And so with this, I would like to share a little bit of my story and share some of the reality that we are living in, many of you know, and some of the work that we are engaging in. I am a Palestinian, the son of 2 Palestinians. My father is from Jerusalem, and his family became refugees in 1948. His father was killed in the war. My grandmother and 7 children were kicked out of their home by Jewish forces and moved to Bethlehem. My mother is from Gaza. And until last year, we still had family in Gaza. We were very, very lucky to be able to take them out from Gaza, my uncles, aunts, my cousins, a week before they closed the Rafah crossing. And we know very well, if that did not happen, they would have perished by now. I grew up in a family, as was said, a Christian family, that through the teachings of my grandmother was always committed to peace and justice. When the person who would have been my grandfather passed away, my grandmother insisted that as a family we will never seek revenge and retaliation for what happened to her husband or what happened to the loss of land that we had in Jerusalem. At the same time, she also always insisted that as a family we will never turn our eyes away from injustice, that we will proactively engage in peace and justice with those who did this to us. And that was the dynamics I grew up in. Facing occupation, facing injustice every day, and growing up in a family that says we are called to be peacemakers. And it wasn't easy for me. seeing as a child the reality, seeing how brutally Israeli soldiers were treating my father as a child. Soldiers who were just a few years older than me, insulting my father, and my father couldn't do anything about it. And then me arguing with him, how dare you ask us to make peace with them, and look what they just did to us, look what they just did to you. But always insisting that this is the path we will take. Until my uncle Mubarak Awad, many of you know, began to train and teach Palestinians in nonviolent resistance and activism. And at the age of 12, I participated in my first nonviolent action, planting olive trees in a land that was going to be confiscated by Israeli settlers in 1983. And that sense of empowerment that I got in that moment of planting trees as soldiers and settlers were uprooting trees at the same time really shifted my life. In 1988, my uncle was arrested by the Israeli government. He was declared a threat to the national security of Israel, a nonviolent activist, was a threat. This is what they call Iran now. That's what they call Hezbollah, a threat to the national security. A nonviolent activist was seen as a threat to the national security of Israel, and for that reason he was deported. Kicked out from the land, never allowed to return and live until this day. And that made me begin to ask the question, what is the power of nonviolence? What is it about nonviolence that makes them do this to my uncle, that I loved so much, that was working with Israeli activists at the same time in the nonviolent movement? And I began my journey. And the journey continues, and it will continue. During the years after his deportation, I ended up back in the US where I did my undergraduate degree and graduate studies. And I returned back to Palestine in 1996 during what was known as the Oslo peace process. And I want to share something with you that I shared earlier in a conversation we were having in a small group. That's very, very important, and I hope you begin to understand what we as Palestinians went through during the years of Oslo. Until the Oslo peace process began, we were a movement of resistance and liberation, focusing on nonviolence, focusing on resisting occupation. Some groups, yes, engaged in armed resistance. This is what they believed needs to happen. But for us, many of us, we were still committed to nonviolence. Overnight, without the occupation ending, without establishing a Palestinian state, we were told that the resistance has to stop. Now we are in a peace process and in nation building. And many people don't understand the shock to us as Palestinians. We went from resisting to all of a sudden engaging in peace work with them without even knowing what the outcome was going to be. That now we have to build a state without even having the land and the freedom to build the state. And it was a shock to many of us in our system. It was a loss. For where are we? What's happening? And that really was, I would call it, a traumatizing turning point for us as Palestinians, where we had to even give up our resistance and forced to give up our resistance while living under occupation, while settlements continued to be built and to expand, while the closure became more restricted on us as Palestinians, and we were told by our own leadership that we couldn't resist anymore. And that really had a very big effect on us as Palestinians, that we still suffer until this day. That this loss of not knowing, not who we are, but what we are. Are we an independent state that's building a state? Are we still under occupation, resisting occupation? And we became lost in that equation. Of course, as many of you know, in 1999 and the year 2000, the whole peace process ended. And we went into a second intifada, the second uprising. And this feeling of resistance came back, but a lot of that resistance was armed resistance, was violent in its nature. Because many people, again, saw the peace process as failing, because many people equated the word nonviolence with peace work. And this is also one of the challenges that we still have in our movement, in the nonviolent resistance movement. You say nonviolence, and you're dialogue people, you're peace-loving people. It doesn't work anymore. Like, no, that's not what nonviolence is. We have to always kind of justify what nonviolence is. That it's about resistance, it's about strength, it's about power, it's about understanding power dynamics, it's about building strategies and tactics. We have to always go back into that argument. But many people in the Second Intifada said, look at what nonviolence caused us. We were nonviolent in the First Intifada. We went into a peace process. The peace process failed us. And so why should we go back to what led to that peace process? And this is where many Palestinians said, armed resistance is the way. And you saw that. You saw that in your news here. And we tried to engage in nonviolence and tried to promote nonviolence. And there were many of us who still engaged in nonviolence, but it became a challenge for us because, again, this crisis is an identity. Are we a liberation movement? Are we a state-building movement? What are we? Who are we? And during that journey, I began to ask questions. And one question is, why did the peace process actually fail? You know, as a Palestinian, I can stand here and give you 1,000 reasons why it is the fault of Israel why the peace process failed. And every one of these would be right. And if you invite an Israeli next week to come here, she will probably give you 1,000 reasons why it's the Palestinian fault why it failed. And you know what? They'll be right as well. But I began to ask the deeper question, what is behind it? Why did this peace process fail? And there are many, many reasons, but one of the key reasons that we need to look at, again, always when we engage in anything, is what is the motivation behind our actions? Why do we do what we do? And one of the things I began to realize is how much trauma and fear were motivating both sides in actually negotiating peace. We were not negotiating peace because we understood that an injustice was done. We did not negotiate peace because we understood that atrocity happened to the indigenous community of the Palestinians and we need to compensate and make up for the disaster that we created in 1948 for the Palestinians. We were negotiating peace because of fear. And there can never be any peace that lasts when you are motivated by fear of the other. When you are not ready to reconcile and to heal that fear and the trauma that exists between you and the other, or the traumas that we have inherited from other experiences that manifest themselves in the relationship. And so I began to look deeper into this issue of trauma, collective trauma, going to Auschwitz numerous times. Because for me it was very important to understand, what is it? What is the trauma and fear that exists within the Jewish community? And yes, we know the atrocities, the Holocaust, and centuries leading up to the Holocaust of what happened. And for us as Palestinians, the Nakba, and centuries of under occupations, Ottoman occupation, British occupation, Jordanian occupation, you name it, that we have been. And that there was no space of healing and reconciliation for these traumas. So these traumas became the shaper of how we identify ourselves and how we perceive and see the other. And I've said this many, many times, and many people have heard me. When I was in Auschwitz, I heard Israeli teachers tell Israeli children, as you know, they go there on many trips. And one of the common lines was, they were telling these children, if the Palestinians have an opportunity, they'll do to you what the Nazis did. And this is why, when October 7th happened, the disaster was a big disaster on October 7th, but the bigger disaster was in seeing the first two statements that Benjamin Netanyahu made on October 7th was reminding people of the Holocaust, declaring this as the second Holocaust, and for Americans like you, This is our 9/11. Those are the two big incidences that immediately he used to trigger fear and trauma back into the Jewish community. And one of my biggest disappointments was in seeing so many of my Israeli activist friends immediately, without even talking to us, move to the side of supporting the government and what they were planning on and what happened in Gaza. And it was a heartbreak for me. People that have been in my house, people that I've done work with, people that I've been in ceremony with, people that I've been in healing circles with. All of a sudden, this trigger immediately went on in them. This is the existential threat. This is what they want to do to us. This is what we learned when we went to Auschwitz. It's happening now. And abandoned the peace work at a time when we needed it the most. This is when we needed it. This is when we needed to come together and face those who are going to commit. And many people knew exactly what was going to happen. I had one Israeli friend. His name is Amit. He called me on October 8th. This was even before the dust settled, before we even knew what the outcomes of October 7th were. And he said, Sami, I want to tell you, I'm very sorry to what we are going to do to your people. And if you never want to talk to me again, I understand. He knew. We all knew this is going to be a disaster. The first thing I did on October 7th that afternoon, called my cousin in Gaza. I said, find a way to get out of Gaza. You're not going to survive this. And he's like, oh, Sami, every few years, we have a war. He's like, no, this is not going to be. They're going to destroy Gaza. People knew. And they still supported the genocide. Some have woken up 2 years after, but the majority still have not. After October 7th, I began to really reflect back on my life journey. 25 years as an activist, engaging in a lot of joint spaces, a lot of nonviolent activities, and I began to ask, what has worked? And for me, I have actually no issue in saying we failed. We failed. Because when something as tragic as this happened, we were not ready for it. We lived an illusion. We lived in a bubble. And meeting together, and dialoguing together, and sitting together, doing hummus together, and never really inviting ourselves to be seriously tough with each other. Never looking the occupation in the eye and saying, this is an absolute disaster, it cannot continue. And it made me really reflect on a lot of my own journey. And I say failure as a badge of honor. Not to say that it's failure, because the moment I declare something as not working, then I begin to look into what can work. Where do we go from here? What are the lessons that we have learned? And I began to understand that there is deep work that we need to do as organizers, as activists. That many of us are in this work, and I know none of you are in this work for the reasons I'm going to say, but many people are in this work because they feel guilty, they're ashamed, they feel they want to do something, the most minimal to get by, to declare they have a friend from the other side, the token Palestinian, the token African American, the token indigenous. They say, look how nice we are. We sit with them, we talk with them, we engage with them. This hasn't worked. one of the decisions that I made after October 7th, which wasn't easy, but after seeing what was happening, was to say, I don't want to connect with Israelis anymore. I don't want to invite Israelis to my house. I don't want to create a space of comfort for them to come to my house and bring all of the guilt and shame and have a Palestinian hugging them and tell them, it's okay. If you believe in justice and you believe in peace, you don't need somebody from the other side to justify your engagement. Either you do it or you don't do it. If you as a Jew, as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Palestinian, as an Israeli, as a white person, as a male, whatever you identify yourself, if you feel there is an issue on the other side that people are suffering from, you engage in it. You don't look for somebody to give you the pat on the back and say, good job. And I know many people need that. But I think it's time for us to stop giving that space. Either you do it or you don't do it. And what we are seeing is, and this is allowing real people on the Israeli side who really understand justice and peace to reflect back on themselves and to begin to ask, what is the responsibility that we need to take in our community? And there's few of them, there's not many of them. But for me, these few are gold compared to many, many who allegedly call themselves peace activists or desiring peace with the other side, but are still embedded in ideologies that enforce separation and division and hatred and power over the other and betterment of us because we are of a certain sect than they are. We need to reclaim power. We need to reclaim our power as activists and to speak truth to power continuously and not to compromise on that at all. And part of the discussion we were having in this small group today is this issue of how we always compromise ourselves as activists to reach a common denominator between us and others. What are the basics that we can agree on? And to understand that a lot of times when we do this, we are sacrificing our own truth and belief system so that we can create space for others to be in the same space with us. And I honor diversity and I honor differences. But there has to be a point where you say, this is what I believe in. And who is with me? And to try my best to enroll those who are not with me in what I believe in, and to see where we can move together. But there is no compromise when it comes to justice. As Palestinians, we have to compromise a lot, a lot, a lot. We turn our backs to please and appease many, many Israelis over the years. And I was called a traitor, I was called a collaborator, I was called the normalizer, I was called the king of normalization. Because I really felt that if we give them the space, we'll find common ground to work on. But when you are powerless and you give space to the powerful in a common space, they take over that space.
That's right.
They take it over. You will see this. In any movement that we have, the moment those who have power, even with their best intention, come into that space, they take it over. And you lose yourself, you lose your purpose. And these are some of the discussions that we are beginning to have now within the Palestinian community. I'm sharing this with you, hopefully to encourage you in the work that you're doing here. Because at the end of the day, I don't want you to do anything for Palestine. If you want to do something else, nice, it's great. I'm not going to say no to you. But in what we are beginning to face here in this country, there has to be a position of no compromise. To say, no, this is not And many people will come to you, and many people will try to align with you, but these people will suck the power out of you. And we've seen this happen over and over again. And it is the movements of liberation where those who are the victims of oppression, when they are empowered to lead, these are the movements that succeed. The movements of liberation, when you have to compromise those who are victims in their power, these movements have failed. And we have seen this success and failure happen in the world. As Palestinians, again I say this, we had to compromise in our resistance to appease Israeli activists. Oh, don't do this activity, it's too much, let's do this activity. Oh, yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, well, as long as you're joining us, because we felt that this is the joint space of resistance. And it has failed. And now what we're saying as Palestinians, we need to decide and we need to lead. We have the vision. What is our vision of liberation? What is it that we want as Palestinians? And those who want to join us, ahlan wa sahlan. And those who don't, maybe one day they will. So what we have been working on in the midst of this absolute disaster that we are facing as Palestinians is to try to bring unity to the Palestinian nation. We are not a political project. Indigenous communities are not political projects to be compromised with. Indigenous communities are communities that are connected, that are rooted, that have history, that have culture, that have tradition in the land, in the water, in the air. And so one of the projects that I'm excited to be part of it's called the Palestinian Councils, where we're inviting Palestinians to come together and sit together in council, the way our ancestors did it, and share stories. We even use one of the tools that we have used from other indigenous communities is the Maori tradition. I don't know if you've met or if you've been to New Zealand. When the Maori introduce themselves, they don't introduce, my name is Sami Awad and I'm from Bethlehem and I work in Poland. They present the history of their ancestry. I've been in talks in New Zealand where the person who was supposed to introduce me talked more than me because most of him introducing himself was where my ancestors came from, what mountains they crossed, what rivers they went through, what other nations, communities that they connected with. And he's talking in Maori, and I'm just sitting like, and giving the signs and everything. And then you say, and our guest, Sami Awad. And so we created this space now where when we create these councils, we use that same tool. Every Palestinian who sits in council introduces himself or herself through the lineage of their ancestry, where their families came from, what rivers they crossed, what communities they engaged in. And quite interestingly, I found many Palestinians who were either born in or lived in the same city that I was born in and lived in for a while, called Kansas City, Missouri. Several Palestinians have been, or their parents have been through Kansas City. Imagine how great a connection that is. So in the midst of genocide, in the midst of disaster, we are in a mode of survival. And the only way that we can survive is through connecting to our indigenous roots and connected to the oneness of what it means to be Palestinian. And to really begin to honor each other in that space. And we're not creating these councils just in the West Bank. We created one in Jordan, we created one in Dubai. Next month, Palestinian Council is going to be created in Portugal for Palestinians that live there. Because Palestinians is Palestinians no matter where you live. We have failed those Palestinians living abroad, the diaspora Palestinians. They are part of our community. Their only problem is that they're not allowed to live with us. So, my encouragement to you is that you need to be strong in the times to come. The darkness that is upon us is very, very real. And there is no bypassing it. There is no ignoring it. Fascism doesn't end at the election booth. You might think it does, but it doesn't. And you know your elections, what happens in your elections every time anyway. And so it's very, very important to organize, to come together, to unify, to put differences aside, and to really begin to ask, what is the vision that you need for your communities? And what are the steps that you need to take to achieve results in your community? And at the same time, yes, continue to support the Palestinian liberation movement. And support the Palestinian liberation movement not because you believe in a one state or a two state. We will deal with these issues. You know, I see many people don't talk with each other here because you're a one stater, you're a two stater. I don't talk to you. I don't work with you because of this or that. That doesn't help us. We will figure out the political situation after liberation, and it will be good for both sides, or all sides, whoever it is. But because you believe in justice, and you believe in equality, and you believe in human rights, this is why you are doing this. If you are a Jew because you are seeing what Israel is doing to Judaism, and you need to say, enough is enough, that's why you do this. If you're a Christian because you are seeing what Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism is doing to Christianity, and you want to say, enough is enough. These are the battles we need to fight. Because these people speak on our behalf. They represent us. I think I'm going to stop with this. With deep, deep gratitude for you. Ray was asking me, you know, what do you take when you come to places like this? I'm going to tell you what I'm going to take, if you don't mind. It's okay? Everybody do this? That's what I take. Thank you.
Well, one more round of applause for Sami Awad. We have time for questions. Those of you who have seen me facilitate before will be familiar with the fact that when I say questions, I do mean questions. Everyone in this room is a subject matter expert in your own opinion, and we wish you blessings on sharing your story in spacious moments, one-on-one and in small communities. We have a special privilege tonight to be able to ask our questions that are in our hearts and really dial it in. Think of the question and the specificity so that we can hear more from Sami's experience, wisdom, strength, and hope. I see a question, I think, is it Caroline?
Yeah. I was trying to wrap my head around what you were saying about like no compromise because it takes away your power, like as a Palestinian in a space with people who might want to help in the Palestinian cause, but then to compromise with them on your values is going to derail the whole thing. Can you like connect that to what you said about like putting aside your differences and working together? Because I want those two things to exist. I'm just trying to like figure out. Yeah. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you for that question. So, I'll give you the example that we lived and experienced as Palestinian activists. I'm thinking of many examples. I'm trying to think of a good one for you now, because it was so many of them. one of the things that we as activists were always asked to compromise on is our engagement, for example, in direct action, in nonviolent direct action. There was always this influence on us by not all, but many Israeli activists who were not ready to take certain risks in direct action. And so we were asked to compromise on, there's a land that's being confiscated by settlers here. And then our intention was to go and stop them and to stand there, and understanding that what might happen to us is arrested, beaten up, or maybe even killed and shot.
Yeah.
And as people who are the victims of oppression, you kind of have this place where there's nothing to lose. I need to defend this land from being confiscated. I need to put my life on the line. And many, again, not all, many Israeli activists are not ready to take that risk. And they say, yeah, the land is there, but maybe we just stand on the street corner here and hold signs and say, don't confiscate the land. We might get beaten up by the soldiers as well here, but we're not in the direct line of fire, the direct confrontation. So this is what I'm saying about not compromising. And we've seen this. We've seen this in many, many communities, many conflicts, many situations of oppression. Here in the United States, the influence of certain white people on Black Lives Matter, we've seen this. There was an attempt to try to, and I'm not saying it's bad intention. It's not infiltration. But it is this norm that you as a victim don't have the luxury that those who are coming to support you have.
Yeah.
We have nothing to lose. They have a lot to lose for them and how they interpret things. And the fact that they put the burden on us that we are coming to support you. So might as well, you give us something for coming to your land and coming to your situation. And this is what I'm specifically talking about.
Yeah.
So this is why I say the resistance is for those who are suffering. And solidarity means solidarity with those who are suffering and standing with them. And we've seen this. There are stories, for example, in the civil rights movement that happened here many years ago, or stories of white people coming to the South, and the only thing they were asking the Black community in the South, what can we do to support you? It wasn't, yeah, but let's not go to that coffee shop because these people in that coffee shop, if we go there, they're too violent, they might beat us up. Let's go to this other coffee shop because it's less radical or less violent. No, they were like, we are ready to put our lives on the line with you. So this is what I'm talking about. The question
Are
is...
you aware of any efforts among Israelis or Palestinians to actually work on the trauma and the fear that is associated with this trauma that is an obstacle?
Yeah. And the question is yes. There are many Palestinians and many Israelis that are working on the trauma. What we have decided to do, because we used to do this work jointly, what we have decided to do is for us as Palestinians, we need to work on our trauma separate and they need to work on their trauma separate. That they need to take responsibility for their trauma, for their inherited trauma and collective trauma, and we need to take care of it on our own. So one of the big things that I'm engaging in is creating these spaces for Palestinians to engage in understanding and healing collective trauma. And what we are seeing is that there's actually more success when we do the work separately, because the traumas that we have inherited are not just traumas that are connected to the relationship with the other side. That there are traumas that when we are in the joint spaces, we don't talk about. But when we are separate, we talk about them because they are not related to the other side. We are able to open traumas of patriarchy, of clanalism, of gender issues that exist within the Palestinian community. And so it's been very, very powerful and strong to work on this, and very, very empowering when we do this work separately.
I really appreciate you, and I'd love to discuss ecological implications of all this, but that would take up much more time than I have. So I'll just ask you a question I'm curious about. Non-believers, atheists, agnostics, non-religious, whatever you call them, they too are on all sides of this. I mean, Netanyahu is one of them. I'm one of them. I fully oppose those people. And I kind of like to, when you're talking about various religious people involved in this, include non-religious people too. I would like you to do that.
Done. And I'm one of them too, by the way. I said I come from a Christian background.
All right.
So, yeah, no, I agree. It's all ideological. And I specifically talk about religion because of the context that we are living in and how religion is used as a tool of fear and separation and division. And this is something that we see here. And then religion is very, very powerful. And we know how people really fall into the traps of religion. But I fully agree with you. I mean, it's also people who are of no faith or no belief systems that also use and abuse power. Right. Like Netanyahu uses religion, by the way. He called the Amalekites on October 7th as well. So he knew how to use and abuse religion in that specific context as well. But thank you for that.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for referring to you as a Christian, and so just meaning that you were of indigenous Christian background. And my question for you is related to what you were saying about the safety issue. Like, thinking how many people who've been to areas as witnesses and actually been beaten up, and so that kept me from wanting to. I mean, I would conceive being a witness somewhere with training to defend oneself, and I just wanted to hear your view on that, and okay, and what their parameters would be, like when training or whenever, when self-defense will cross over into violence.
So, one thing that we always say in nonviolent movements is you never put people in a situation that they are not ready for. And you never force anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. This is core in nonviolent resistance and activism. And so when we engage in nonviolence, there are many layers and many levels of engagement. Everything from even never going there and what you do here is very important for us. And if you go there, what service that you are ready to give to the Palestinian community. Again, the question is, what can I do to support you? What do you need from me? And if it's in the permaculture farm that you go to and you say, I just want to be there for 2 months and support permaculture in Palestine, talk about environmental issues because there are amazing environmental projects that are happening in Palestine, to saying I'm ready to be in protective presence to Palestinians that their communities are being destroyed by Jewish gangs. It's your readiness, your preparation, and then definitely the training that is needed. And this is something that we are also missing a lot in our nonviolent work, and especially with internationals that are coming in solidarity, is that many people come to Palestine and they're taking a one-day training, and then all of a sudden are thrown in a Palestinian village where they have to face settler gangs and are being told, deal with it. And this is dangerous. It's dangerous for them and dangerous for the community as well. And so we are actually saying that extensive training needs to happen. One of the projects that we co-sponsor, we're the fiscal sponsor of Nonviolence International, is UCPIP, Unarmed Civilian Protection in Palestine. And these are internationals who are well trained. Many of them have come from experiences in being protective presence in other countries. And they take a 4 months extensive training before they are even allowed to come and participate in protective presence. Because it is now a war zone. What the settler gangs are doing to Palestinians, you probably heard yesterday, 2 internationals were beaten up almost to death. A 51-year-old and a 71-year-old. We're not talking about young teenagers that are just running around. Like, these are elders and people who came really, and they were beaten up almost to the point of death. And it's getting really, really dangerous. So if you want to come and engage in this protective presence in Palestine, you need to be very well prepared and very ready and understand that there is a risk that you are ready to take. And so yes, I fully agree. Training is key, and preparation is key, and putting yourself where you can be of service. The challenge, as I said before, is not coming where you are put in service and saying, don't plant the tomatoes here, plant them here, or don't, like, go with the Palestinians, even if we're wrong. You can give advice. But really be in service to the community, empowering the community. This is a community that is suffering, that is living in resignation and hopelessness. They need to be empowered. It is their liberation struggle. And again, this is one of the challenges we have, and you've seen this. Many people come to liberate Palestine, the savior mindset. Many kids come because they're fighting with their parents in Wisconsin, and they come to liberate Palestine to take revenge on their parents, or they have issue with their school here, and they go to Palestine. We don't want that.
Sami, this feels like a good time to ask, because tonight's event was offered for free, and that there's an opportunity to give donations, and you have mentioned protective presence, and I wonder if you would share with us, if we wanted to support that organization and others that Nonviolence International is a fiscal sponsor of, how could we do that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, I do want to encourage you to support some of the projects that we support on the ground in Palestine. Nonviolence International acts as a fiscal sponsor to many groups and many activities. And this includes the U.S. Boat to Gaza, the Flotilla movement, which many of you know, which is getting ready to launch another big flotilla movement in April. It includes unarmed civilian protection in Palestine, which is about internationals that are well-trained coming and being in solidarity with Palestinians in the hotspot areas where Palestinians are being destroyed in Area C, especially villages and communities there. It includes organizations also in Gaza. One of the partner organizations in Gaza is called Dignity for Palestinians, that provide medical aid and education and hygiene care for Palestinians in these areas. And so you could go on our website, Nonviolence International. You could see the list of our projects that we sponsor. And believe me, like, I don't know how many people are here tonight. 100 people? If 100 people put $40 each in supporting one of the projects, we could get 2 internationals fully trained, fully equipped to be for 3 months supporting Palestinians in these areas. And you're definitely invited to join as well. And we also support the Center for Jewish Nonviolence that many of you are connected with, and you know, and other groups that are on the list. So we would really appreciate your financial support to these projects that are really doing amazing work, and at the same time suffering financially because of the lack of resources that they have. So nonviolenceinternational.net, and then there's a list of the projects that we sponsor there.
Wonderful. And for everyone who signed up your email list in the front, and you can do that on the way out if you didn't get a chance on the way in, Peter has the sign-up sheet by the book sales table there. We'll be sending out that link afterwards to everyone who attended. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and we've heard from some of our brilliant elders in the room and seasoned activists. Are there any young people who haven't asked a question yet, might want to ask a question? Somebody maybe who doesn't normally speak up or has a curiosity. There's no dumb question in this space. All right. Okay, let's take a hand from this person. Young at heart.
Yeah, thank you. Sami, I really like your response to how you can work on the trauma with other Palestinians and let the Israelis work on their own trauma with their own self. Is it encouraging in your work with other Palestinians to know that there are some Israelis doing similar work on their own traumas? Do you have any communication back and forth about that?
Well, it's encouraging for me. And it is encouraging for Palestinians, because the moment you step out of trauma, what you are really doing is you are stepping also out of the ideology that uses and abuses this trauma for political gains. And so this is where the success is. And I'll be very honest to say, the person that called me the next day, October 8th, he was a person that has been participating in a lot of the deep trauma work that we had been engaging in. And out of many, as I said, many Israelis who abandoned ship after October 7th, the few that remained were the few that immediately understood what the Israeli government was asking them to do. Because they had gone through the journey of healing that fear of the collective, inherited existential threat in them. They had stepped out of Zionism as an ideology that was promised to them as protecting them. And that was before October 7th. And so people who really were able to step out of that space, out of that trauma, began to see things differently. Not everybody, but many, many people. And so this is why healing the collective inherited trauma, or becoming aware of it, I mean, maybe we never heal it in that sense, but becoming aware, again, what motivates me? This is what we started with. What motivates me to do what I do? Am I motivated by fear as a peace activist? Or am I motivated by love and justice and compassion? And if I'm motivated by fear, I need to check myself and to ask, where is this fear coming from? What is the story behind the fear? And this is kind of the work that we do. And so yes, there is success happening, but in the scale of the atrocities that we are facing, honestly, it's very, very little. And our fear as Palestinians, and I don't want to end on a negative note, but to understand that we are really, really afraid of a real existential destruction of the Palestinian community in the Holy Land. This is what's happening. And there's nothing that's stopping the machinery of doing what it's doing. And now it's the villages in Area C. You probably heard about the new law that was passed where Israelis can purchase now land in Area A that is under the Palestinian Authority. That means every Palestinian city will sooner than later become like Hebron. If you go to Hebron, 400 settlers in the middle of the city surrounded by 4,000 soldiers protecting them, every Palestinian city can become that. If you come to Bethlehem in 2 years, you might have to walk past an Israeli security checkpoint in Major Square to get to the Church of Nativity to visit it. There is nothing that's stopping them. And again, this is why the work needs to happen here. This is the belly of the beast. This is empire, this is colonialism, it's all happening here. And you need to stop it. You need to stop it here. Thank you.
Next to the sign?
Hi. I'm Palestinian, and I was curious as to why you use the word Israeli instead of maybe Israeli settler. Is that not a form of compromise as well?
All right.
What was your
So the question is, why do I use the word Israelis than Israeli settlers? And part of actually the language that I've been using recently is not even using the word settlers. I made an Instagram post a few weeks ago where I said we cannot use the word settlers to define a certain group of people that are seen by the rest of their society as being on the fringe. That using the word settlers makes no responsibility for the rest of the Jewish community. Saying, oh, but these are the settlers. These are the ones that just live in the West Bank. They're nothing like us. And it is actually a term that was coined by the Israeli left to alleviate responsibility for those who are doing these things. So when I use the word now Israeli Jews, and that's how I define it, or Jewish gangs, it is saying that they are part of the collective community. Every Israeli is responsible for what is happening by the settlers, and every Israeli in that sense is a settler as well. So the language that I use is also very precise in this. So when I say Israelis, yes, we can say the word settlers, we can say colonialists, but at the same time, to define them as that means all of them are responsible. All of them are accountable. All of them take responsibility for what the actions of a few or a many are doing.
Just like we are all responsible.
Yes,
Exactly.
just like we are responsible now.
Exactly. Everybody's responsible for the actions. And then to understand that these people are fully endorsed, fully funded, they are fully, the security of the police is for them, the security of the military is for them. So the system and structures of power fully endorse these Israelis and their actions.
Right.
So and we are responsible, like you said. We cannot alleviate ourselves from responsibility, not because we are pacifists or peace activists or nonviolent activists. We say we are not responsible. We need to take responsibility.
Right.
So I'm Palestinian American as well, and you explained the Israeli settler thing really, really well, you know, as far as like all Israelis are, but one of the things you said is that you call them Israelis and you call them Israeli Jews. I personally think it's very, very important to call them Israeli Jews, because only Jews can go to occupy Palestine, and there are some Palestinians who the Israeli citizenship was imposed on us in 1948. So it's really important, I think,
I agree with you.
to say Israeli Jew.
Yes.
And it also brings up the consciousness of Americans in this country.
Thank you. Good. Thank you, everyone.
One more last round of applause for You can come to the table with Peter over here if you would like to purchase a book.